The refugee camp on Kepler 442b stretched for miles under the pale orange light of twin suns. Makeshift shelters dotted the landscape like scattered bones, housing the survivors of dozens of worlds that had fallen to the Dominion's advance. The air tasted of dust and desperation. Marcus Chun adjusted his prosthetic leg as he walked through the camp, his worn military jacket hanging loose on his frame. 3 years since the Battle of Proxima Station, and he still felt like he was carrying the weight of everyone he couldn't save. The doctors said the phantom pain would fade, but they never mentioned the phantom guilt. He'd volunteered for refugee assistance duty after his medical discharge. Better than sitting in some veterans' facility, watching the news feeds of more worlds burning. At least here, he could help people who still had a chance. That's when he saw her. She sat on a small patch of ground near the camp's edge, 3 battered bags arranged in a perfect triangle around her. Her species was unfamiliar to Marcus, tall and thin with silvery skin that seemed to shimmer in the dying light. Her large, dark eyes held a wariness that spoke of recent trauma. What struck him most was how she never left her bags. In the 2 weeks he'd been making rounds through this section, she'd always been there, sitting in the exact same position. Other refugees had approached her, tried to offer food or conversation, but she'd gesture them away with quick, nervous movements. Marcus had seen enough shell shock to recognize it. The hypervigilance, the defensive positioning, the way she flinched at sudden sounds. Whatever had happened to her on her homeworld, it had left deep scars. He started bringing her food during his daily rounds, not approaching too close, just leaving meal packets within reach and continuing on his way. She never acknowledged him directly, but the food was always gone when he returned. After a week of this routine, she stopped flinching when she saw him coming. "Name's Marcus," he said one evening, setting down a warm meal packet. "You don't have to tell me yours if you don't want to." She looked at him with those large eyes, and for a moment he thought she might speak. Instead, she touched her throat and shook her head slowly. "Can't talk or won't?" Marcus asked gently. "Either way is fine. I've got time." The woman pointed to her throat, then made a cutting gesture. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. He'd seen what the Dominion did to prisoners who tried to resist. Cutting vocal cords was one of their more common methods of breaking spirits. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "but you're safe now. The Dominion won't reach this system." Her expression suggested she didn't believe him. Marcus couldn't blame her. He made similar promises to civilians on 6 different worlds, and 5 of those worlds were now ash. Over the following days, Marcus established a routine. Morning check-in, afternoon meal delivery, evening status report. The woman began to respond with small gestures, a nod for yes, a head shake for no, pointing when she needed something. Her name, he learned through patient questioning, was something that sounded like Zara in Standard Galactic, though the subtle clicks and whistles of her native language were lost to her injured throat. Zara's bags remained a mystery. They were old but well-maintained, made from some kind of metallic fabric that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. She never opened them while Marcus was present, never moved them more than a few inches from their original positions. When strong winds threatened to scatter lighter objects across the camp, other refugees would scramble to secure their belongings. Zara would simply place her hands on her bags and wait, as if their weight alone could anchor them against any storm. "What's in there?" Marcus asked one day, settling down at a respectful distance with his own meal. "Must be pretty important if you won't let them out of your sight." Zara looked at the bags, then at Marcus. Her fingers moved in what he'd learned was her way of thinking through a response. Finally, she held up 3 fingers, then pointed to each bag in turn. 3 things. 3 important things. Family, Marcus guessed. She nodded, but her expression was complicated. Not the simple grief he'd expected, but something more complex. Fear mixed with determination, love shadowed by desperation. That night, Marcus lay in his small quarters thinking about Zara and her mysterious bags. He'd processed hundreds of refugees since taking this assignment, each carrying their own stories of loss and survival. But something about this woman nagged at him. The way she positioned herself, always with clear sight lines to multiple escape routes. The fact that she'd chosen the camp's edge rather than seeking safety in numbers. And those bags, the way she guarded them, suggested they contained more than just personal effects. The answer came at 0347 hours, when proximity alarms screamed across the camp. Marcus rolled out of bed, grabbing his emergency kit and the old pulse rifle he wasn't supposed to have. Outside, emergency lights painted everything in harsh red as camp security tried to maintain order among panicking refugees. Dominion scout ships, came the announcement over the camp speakers. 3 vessels detected at the system's edge. This is not a drill. All personnel to emergency stations. Marcus's blood ran cold. The Dominion never sent scouts unless an invasion fleet was already being prepared. They had maybe hours, maybe days before this sanctuary became another killing field. He ran toward Zara's position, fighting against the flow of refugees streaming toward the camp's reinforced center. When he reached her spot, she was already standing, her 3 bags clutched against her chest. But instead of fleeing with the others, she was scanning the horizon with the practiced eye of someone who'd done this before. "We need to go," Marcus shouted over the alarms. "The evacuation shuttles will launch within the hour." Zara shook her head firmly, pointing toward the camp's outer perimeter. She wanted to go the opposite direction, away from the evacuation routes and deeper into the planet's wilderness. "That's suicide," Marcus protested. "The forests are unmapped. No shelter, no communication, no extraction possibilities." But Zara was already moving, her bag secured to her body with practiced efficiency. She paused only to look back at Marcus. And in her eyes, he saw something that made him reconsider everything he thought he knew about this quiet refugee. This wasn't fear driving her actions. This was strategy. Marcus made a choice that would change everything. Instead of reporting to his evacuation station, he followed Zara into the wilderness. His military training screamed at him that this was the wrong call, but 3 years of survivor's guilt and the memory of too many failed evacuations made the decision for him. Behind them, the refugee camp's lights grew distant as they climbed into the forested hills. Ahead lay unknown terrain and whatever secrets Zara carried in those 3 carefully guarded bags. As they walked through the alien forest, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just stepped into something much larger than a simple refugee evacuation. The way Zara moved through the terrain, the confidence with which she chose their path, the fact that she'd been positioned at the camp's edge as if expecting this exact scenario. None of it fit with the traumatized victim narrative he'd constructed in his mind. "Who are you really?" he asked the darkness, knowing she couldn't answer even if she wanted to. The twin moons of Kepler, 442b, cast strange shadows through the canopy as they climbed deeper into the hills. Behind them, the first explosions lit the sky as Dominion forces began their assault on the camp. Marcus had been through enough evacuations to know how this would end. A few lucky refugees might make it off-world, but most would be processed into the Dominion slave labor system. Zara seemed to know exactly where she was going, following animal trails and geological features with the certainty of someone reading a map. Every few minutes she would stop, listen to the forest sounds, then adjust their course slightly. Her bags never slowed her down, carried as if they were part of her body rather than external burdens. After 2 hours of steady climbing, they reached a small clearing where a stream cut through the forest. Zara finally stopped, setting her bags down in their familiar triangular formation. She knelt beside the stream, cupping water in her hands to drink. Marcus checked his portable scanner. "We're 12 kilometers from the camp," he reported quietly. "Far enough that we should be clear of the initial sweep, but we can't stop here long." Zara nodded, but she was looking at her bags with an expression Marcus had never seen before. Not the protective wariness he'd grown accustomed to, but something that looked almost like anticipation. She opened the first bag. The soft blue light that emerged made Marcus instinctively reach for his weapon before his rational mind caught up. Inside the bag, Nestled in what looked like a biosupport matrix was an egg. Not like any egg Marcus had ever seen. This one pulsed with its own internal light, and the surface seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Jesus Marcus Brieted. Is that what I think it is? Zara opened the second bag, revealing another egg, this one pulsing with green light. The third bag contained an egg that glowed with warm amber radiance. Marcus's combat experience had taken him to a lot of worlds, shown him a lot of species, but he'd only heard rumors about this. Reproductive eggs that required specific environmental conditions, carried by females of certain advanced species when their homeworlds were threatened. The gestation period could be extended almost indefinitely as long as the carrier maintained proper care, but once the hatching process began, it couldn't be stopped. "Your children," he said, understanding flooding through him. "You've been carrying your children this whole time." Zara nodded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. She gestured to the eggs, then to herself, then made a complex series of hand movements that Marcus interpreted as some kind of explanation about timing and necessity. The Dominion attack triggered something, Marcus guessed. The stress, the danger, it's starting the hatching process. As if responding to his words, the blue egg pulsed more brightly, and hairline cracks appeared across its surface. Zara looked at Marcus with desperate urgency, pointing to the eggs, then to the forest around them, then to him. The message was clear. She needed his help to protect her children during their most vulnerable moment. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders like a familiar coat. 3 years ago, he failed to save his squad when Proxima Station fell. He'd spent every day since wondering if he could have made different choices, better choices. Now, in a clearing on an alien world with Dominion forces closing in, he had another chance to keep someone alive. "Okay," he said quietly. "Tell me what you need." Zara's relief was visible as she began unpacking supplies from hidden compartments in her bags. Biomonitors, nutrient dispensers, thermal regulators, everything needed to support the hatching process. She'd been prepared for this possibility all along, carrying not just her children, but an entire portable nursery. As Marcus helped her set up the equipment, he began to understand the full scope of what Zara had been doing. She wasn't just a refugee fleeing the Dominion. She was a mother on a mission to ensure the survival of her species. The eggs represented not just her own children, but possibly the last genetic legacy of her entire world. The responsibility was staggering, but Marcus found himself calmer than he'd been in months. This was a mission he could understand, a goal he could focus on. Keep the eggs safe until they hatched. Protect Zara and her children until they could reach safety. Simple objectives with clear success criteria. Of course, simple didn't mean easy. The blue eggs' cracks were spreading, and with them came a low humming sound that seemed to resonate through the forest floor. Beautiful, but potentially problematic if Dominion search teams had acoustic detection equipment. "How long?" Marcus asked, gesturing to the eggs. Zara held up her fingers in what he interpreted as 6 hours. 6 hours of vulnerability while 3 new lives emerged into a world under attack. Marcus checked his equipment inventory. Limited ammunition, basic medical supplies, enough field rations for 3 days. His prosthetic leg was holding up well, but extended combat operations would test its limits. Most importantly, his communication gear could reach the evacuation fleet if they were still in system, but using it would also broadcast their position to anyone else listening. "We'll make it work," he told Zara, and was surprised to find he actually believed it. As the night deepened and the eggs continued their slow emergence into the world, Marcus established a defensive perimeter around the clearing. His military training kicked in, analyzing sight lines, potential approach routes, and escape options. The stream would mask some sounds, but could also cover the noise of approaching enemies. The trees provided concealment, but limited his field of fire. Not an ideal defensive position, but it would have to do. Around 0200 hours, the blue egg split open completely. What emerged was unlike anything Marcus had expected. Not a miniature version of Zara, but something that looked almost crystalline, with features that seemed to shift between solid and ethereal. The newborn's first sound was a musical note that harmonized with the humming still coming from the other two eggs. Zara cradled her first child with practiced gentleness, guiding it through what Marcus assumed were the first critical moments of life outside the egg. The infant's crystalline skin gradually solidified into something more familiar, still silvery like its mother's, but with an opalescent quality that caught and reflected the moonlight. "Beautiful," Marcus whispered and meant it. The green egg began cracking just as distant engine sounds echoed through the forest. Dominion search craft, still kilometers away, but definitely getting closer. Marcus checked his rifle's charge level and tried to calculate how much time they had before the search pattern brought aircraft directly overhead. "Not enough time. We need to move as soon as the hatching is complete," he told Zara. "I know somewhere we can go." It was a lie. Marcus had no idea where they could go that would be safer than this clearing. But he learned long ago that people facing impossible situations needed to hear confidence, even false confidence. Panic was contagious, but so was determination. Zara seemed to understand their situation. As the green egg continued its opening process, she began repacking their supplies with efficient movements. The first infant was already showing signs of mobility, its crystalline appendages exploring the immediate environment with obvious curiosity. The green egg revealed an infant that was similar to its sibling, but with distinct differences in coloration and what looked like sensory organs. This one's first sound was a complex trill that seemed to communicate directly with both its mother and its sibling. 2 down, 1 to go. The amber egg was taking longer, its cracks spreading more slowly than the others. Zara watched it with obvious concern, occasionally touching the surface and making soft clicking sounds that Marcus assumed were some kind of encouragement. "Problem?" he asked. Zara gestured to the amber egg, then made a motion suggesting delay or difficulty. The third infant was taking its time, but forcing the process could be dangerous. Engines sound were getting closer. Marcus estimated 15 minutes before search craft would be directly overhead, 20 minutes before ground forces could reach their position if they'd been spotted. "We move in 10 minutes whether it's ready or not," Marcus decided. "I'll carry the third egg if necessary." Zara looked at him with something approaching amazement. In her expression, Marcus saw the recognition that he was willing to risk everything for children that weren't even his own species. The moment felt significant, though he couldn't say exactly why. At 9 minutes, the amber egg finally split open. The third infant was different from its siblings, where they had been crystalline and ethereal. This one was clearly more substantial, with features that reminded Marcus more of Zara herself. Its first sound was a deep, thrumming note that seemed to vibrate through Marcus's bones. "Okay," Marcus said, shouldering his pack. "Time to go." As they prepared to leave the clearing, Zara did something unexpected. She approached Marcus and pressed something small and warm into his hand. When he looked down, he saw what appeared to be a crystalline scale that pulsed with soft light. She touched her throat, then his hand, then made a gesture toward her children. Even without words, the meaning was clear. "You are family now." Marcus closed his fingers around the scale, feeling its warmth spread through his palm. "I won't let anything happen to them," he promised. Together, they left the clearing and disappeared into the alien forest, 3 newborn lights hidden against their mother's chest while overhead, the hunters continued their deadly search. The real test was just beginning. The cave system Marcus remembered from his initial survey of Kepler, 442b, lay 15 kilometers deeper into the wilderness. He'd marked it during his first week on planet as a potential fallback position. Old mining tunnels that the first colonists had abandoned when they found better deposits closer to the settlement sites. Leading Zara and her 3 newborn children through the forest while avoiding Dominion search patrols proved to be the most challenging mission of Marcus's military career. The infants were remarkably quiet, but their bioluminescent qualities meant they had to travel during daylight hours when their glow wouldn't give away their position. The blue and green children, as Marcus had started thinking of them, adapted quickly to their new environment. Within hours of hatching, they could cling to their mother's body during movement, their small limbs surprisingly strong. The amber child, the largest of the three, required more careful handling, but compensated by being eerily alert to their surroundings. Smart kids, Marcus whispered during their second rest stop. They know we're in danger. Zara nodded, her hand moving in patterns that Marcus was beginning to recognize as her species' equivalent of sign language. From what he could gather, her children were developing faster than normal due to the stress conditions of their birth. Evolution's way of giving them a fighting chance in a hostile environment. The Dominion search patterns were methodical and thorough. Marcus counted at least 6 different aircraft making sweeps through their sector, supported by ground teams that moved through the forest with military precision. Twice they had to take cover while patrols passed within 100 meters of their position. During the second close call, something extraordinary happened. They were pressed against a cluster of fallen trees when a Dominion squad approached their hiding spot. 8 soldiers in full combat gear, scanning with thermal equipment and motion detectors. Marcus readied his rifle, knowing that if they were discovered, he might be able to buy Zara and her children a few extra seconds to escape. That's when the amber child began to hum. It was barely audible, a subsonic vibration that Marcus felt more than heard. But as the sound continued, the Dominion soldiers began to show signs of confusion. Their formation wavered, their scanning patterns became erratic, and after several minutes, they moved off in the wrong direction entirely. Marcus stared at the infant in amazement. Did that little one just mess with their heads? Zara's expression confirmed his suspicion. Her amber child possessed some kind of psychic ability, not mind control exactly, but something that could cloud perception or create confusion. A natural defense mechanism that had probably evolved to protect young members of her species from predators. Well, that's useful, Marcus murmured. But the infant's ability came with a cost. Using it seemed to exhaust the small creature, leaving it listless and requiring extra care from its mother. Marcus added psychic baby fatigue management to his growing list of mission parameters. They reached the cave system as the planet's twin suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Marcus had worried about the infant's reaction to enclosed spaces, but they seemed to find the caves comforting. Their bioluminescence provided gentle illumination as they settled into the deepest chamber Marcus could find. Secure for now, he reported quietly to Zara as she arranged her children in a comfortable cluster. But we can't stay here indefinitely. The caves would hide them from aerial detection, but Dominion ground forces would eventually expand their search radius to include these tunnels. Marcus estimated they had perhaps 3 days before systematic cave-by-cave searches would reach their position. 3 days to figure out what came next. As Zara tended to her children, Marcus established watch positions and communication protocols. His military radio could reach orbit if any friendly ships were still in system, but using it would broadcast their position to every Dominion receiver within range. A risk he wasn't willing to take unless absolutely necessary. The children were developing rapidly. By the end of their first day in the caves, all 3 showed significant growth and increased mobility. The blue child had developed what looked like natural camouflage abilities, its skin adapting to match surrounding surfaces. The green child displayed heightened sensory awareness, often alerting to sounds and movements long before Marcus or Zara detected them. And the amber child's psychic abilities were becoming stronger. Your people evolved on a dangerous world, Marcus observed during their second night in the caves. These aren't just children, they're survival specialists. Zara touched the crystalline scale she'd given him, then gestured to her children and made complex hand movements that Marcus interpreted as explaining their species' history. A world of predators and environmental dangers that had shaped her people into something remarkable, part physical, part crystalline, part energy. Their children were born with abilities that would let them survive in almost any environment. No wonder the Dominion wanted to capture them, rather than simply destroy their worlds. The scale in Marcus's pocket had been growing warmer over the past 2 days, and he noticed other effects as well. His reflexes seemed sharper, his awareness heightened. When he mentioned it to Zara, she indicated that this was normal. The scale created a limited empathic bond that would help him protect her children. Biological security system, Marcus realized. You're making sure I'm invested in their survival. But as he watched the three infants playing together in the cave's soft glow, Marcus knew the bond wasn't necessary. He would have protected them anyway. Something about their innocence, their trust, their obvious intelligence. They represented everything the Dominion sought to destroy, and everything worth fighting for. On their third day in the caves, the Green Child alerted them to approaching danger hours before Marcus's equipment detected anything. A systematic search pattern was moving through the cave system, getting closer with each hour. Time to go, Marcus announced, but Zara shook her head firmly. She pointed to her children, then made gestures suggesting they weren't ready for another long journey. The rapid growth and development had taken a toll on their energy reserves, and forcing them to travel now could harm their long-term health. Marcus faced a tactical decision: stay and fight in a defensive position with limited escape routes, or force the children to travel when they weren't physically ready for it. The choice was made for him when his radio crackled to life. Any survivors in Grid 77 Alpha? This is Terran Defense Force Vessel Prometheus. We are conducting emergency evacuation. Respond on emergency frequency. Marcus grabbed his radio, then hesitated. Responding would give away their position to the Dominion forces as well as the rescue ship. But it might be their only chance to get off planet before the systematic search reached them. He looked at Zara, saw her watching her children with the fierce protectiveness of a mother who had already lost one world. She nodded once, giving him permission to make the choice for all of them. Prometheus, this is Marcus Chun, former Terra Marine Corps. I have 4 civilians requiring immediate evacuation. Grid position 77 Alpha Delta. Be advised, Dominion ground forces are conducting active sweep operations in this area. The response came within seconds. Marcus Chun, we show you as Kia at Proxima Station. Please confirm your identity. Service number 7745, Delta, Kilo Niner. Awarded Purple Heart and medical discharge following amputation of left leg below knee. Currently on refugee assistance duty. Marcus paused, then added, and I'm very much alive. Thanks for asking. Confirmed, Sergeant Chun. What's your tactical situation? Marcus gave them a brief summary. Cave system, 3 infants who couldn't travel far, Dominion search teams getting closer. The response was everything he'd hoped for and everything he'd feared. We can extract you, but it has to be now. Dominion capital ships are moving into system. We've got maybe 30 minutes before we have to jump. 30 minutes to travel 15 kilometers through hostile territory with 3 newborn children and their injured mother. Negative extraction, Marcus decided. Cannot make the timeline with current civilian status. Continue evacuation operations. Sergeant, we're not leaving you behind. That's an order, Prometheus. Chin out. Marcus switched off his radio before they could argue further. Beside him, Zara was watching with an expression of amazement. She understood what he'd just done, given up his own chance of escape to avoid putting her children at risk. It's the right call, Marcus told her quietly. We'll find another way. But as Dominion voices echoed from the cave entrance, growing louder with each passing minute, Marcus wondered if he'd just made the last decision of his military career. The Amber Child began to hum again, and Marcus felt that strange resonance in his bones. But this time, instead of confusion or misdirection, the psychic emanations felt different. Stronger, more focused. The child was learning to use its abilities more precisely. As Dominion soldiers entered the cave system, their helmet lights cutting through the darkness, Marcus realized that Zara's children might not be helpless civilians after all. They were survivors of a species that had evolved to fight back against predators. and they were about to show the Dominion exactly what that meant. The first soldier to round the corner into their chamber stopped abruptly, his weapon lowering as the Amber Child's psychic influence washed over him. Marcus watched in fascination as the man's expression became peaceful, almost serene. "All clear in here," the soldier reported over his comm, moving to next section. As the search team moved past their position, Zara gathered her children close and looked at Marcus with newfound hope. Her Amber Child had just demonstrated that they weren't helpless refugees running from superior forces. They were a family with extraordinary abilities, led by a mother who had crossed half the galaxy to ensure her species' survival, protected by a human soldier who had rediscovered his purpose. The Dominion had no idea what they were really hunting. Marcus checked his equipment and began planning their next move. The caves were no longer safe, but he'd spotted other possibilities during their journey here. Abandoned industrial sites, natural formations that could provide shelter, even the possibility of linking up with other resistance groups that might be operating in the wilderness. "We're not running anymore," he told Zara quietly. "We're going to find a way to fight back." The crystalline scale in his pocket pulsed with warmth, and Marcus felt the empathic bond strengthen. Zara's determination flowed through the connection, along with something else, hope. For the first time since the Dominion attack began, she believed they might actually survive this. As they prepared to leave the caves under cover of darkness, Marcus reflected on how much had changed in just 3 days. He'd started this mission as a broken veteran trying to help one traumatized refugee. Now he was part of something larger, protector of 3 children who might represent the future of an entire species. The responsibility should have terrified him. Instead, it felt like coming home. Outside the caves, the forest waited under alien stars. Somewhere in that wilderness lay safety, allies, and possibly a way to turn the tables on their hunters. Marcus led the way into the darkness, Zara and her extraordinary children following close behind. The real fight was about to begin. Behind them, Dominion forces continued their methodical search, unaware that their quarry had already slipped away into the night. And high above the planet, the last evacuation ships prepared to jump to hyperspace, leaving Kepler 442b to its fate. But Marcus Chin wasn't planning to let this world fall without a fight. Not anymore. The abandoned mining facility sat in a valley 20 kilometers from their cave system, its rusted equipment and empty buildings offering both shelter and strategic advantages. Marcus had found references to it in his pre-deployment briefings. A failed venture from the early colonial period, abandoned when the ore veins proved less profitable than expected. More importantly, it was connected to the planet's old communication network. "If I can get those transmitters working," Marcus explained to Zara as they surveyed the facility from a ridge above, "we might be able to contact other resistance cells, coordinate efforts, maybe even get word out to the Terran Defense Force." Zara's children had continued their remarkable development during the week since leaving the caves. The blue child could now maintain active camouflage for hours at a time, effectively invisible unless it chose to reveal itself. The green child's sensory abilities had expanded to include what seemed like precognitive flashes, warnings about danger several minutes before it materialized. And the Amber Child's psychic abilities had grown far beyond simple confusion effects. During their journey to the mining facility, they'd encountered 3 separate Dominion patrols. Each time, the Amber Child had projected what Marcus could only describe as a perception field, making the patrols see empty forest where a family was actually hiding. The effect was becoming more sophisticated, more powerful, but also more draining for the young creature. "We need to be careful," Marcus warned Zara. "If your little one pushes too hard, it could cause permanent damage." Zara's response, communicated through their growing repertoire of gesture and empathic connection, indicated that she understood the risks. But she also made it clear that her children's abilities were their greatest advantage against the Dominion forces. Learning to use them effectively might be the difference between survival and capture. The mining facility proved to be a treasure trove of useful equipment. Marcus found functional power cells, communication gear, and even a small fabrication unit that could produce basic tools and weapons. More importantly, the facility's position in the valley provided natural defensive advantages, while its industrial infrastructure could support a small group indefinitely. As Marcus worked to restore the communication system, Zara established a secure nesting area for her children in one of the facility's deeper buildings. The infants were showing signs of entering a new developmental phase, periods of dormancy that allowed for rapid growth and ability enhancement. Like caterpillars becoming butterflies, Marcus observed, except these butterflies might be able to take down starships. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. Zara's species had evolved extraordinary abilities, but her children were developing those abilities under extreme stress conditions. There was no telling what they might become capable of, or what the psychological cost might be. Marcus got his first real breakthrough with the communication system on their 5th day at the facility. A weak signal from somewhere in the northern mountain range, broadcasting on old Terran frequencies. Unknown station. This is Watchpost 7. Identify yourself. Marcus felt his heart race. Watchpost 7. This is Sergeant Marcus Chun, Terran Marine Corps. I have civilian refugees requiring assistance. Chun, this is Major Sarah Kim. We heard you were dead. Reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. What's your situation, Major? The story that emerged over the next hour painted a picture that was both hopeful and sobering. Kim's unit had been conducting training exercises in the mountains when the Dominion attacked. They'd managed to avoid the initial sweep and had been organizing resistance operations for the past 2 weeks. Approximately 60 personnel, including both military and civilian specialists, operating from a hidden base in the mountain caves. We've been watching Dominion patterns, Kim reported. They're not just occupying the planet, they're terraforming it, converting the atmosphere to something more suitable for their physiology. Within 6 months, the air won't be breathable for most humanoid species. Marcus felt cold understanding wash over him. The Dominion wasn't just conquering worlds. They were transforming them into planets where only their species could survive. A form of genocide that eliminated resistance by making the very environment hostile to other forms of life. Major, I need to bring my civilians to your position. But you should know, they're not standard refugees. Marcus gave Kim a brief summary of Zara and her children, their abilities, and their potential strategic value. The response was immediate. Bring them in, Chun. We need every advantage we can get. But getting to Kim's position would require crossing 30 kilometers of increasingly hostile territory. Dominion forces had been reinforcing their positions, and atmospheric conversion stations were beginning to alter the local environment. Marcus could already detect changes in the air quality, subtle shifts in oxygen levels, and atmospheric pressure that would become more pronounced over time. They had perhaps days before the journey became impossible for Zara and her children. As Marcus planned their route to the mountain stronghold, an unexpected development changed everything. The Amber Child approached him while he was studying tactical maps, its crystalline features somehow conveying urgent communication despite its inability to speak in any conventional sense. Through the empathic bond, Marcus felt a rush of images and sensations. Dominion ships in orbit, massive energy buildups, and something else, a presence, vast and alien, moving through hyperspace toward their system. Reinforcements, Marcus realized. The Dominion is bringing in their heavy forces. Zara confirmed his interpretation with sharp, worried gestures. Her people had faced this before on other worlds. The pattern was always the same. Initial conquest forces, terraforming equipment, then the arrival of Dominion capital ships to complete the transformation. But her Amber Child was communicating something else. Not just awareness of the approaching fleet, but the ability to do something about it. Marcus stared at the infant in amazement. You're saying you can reach them? Affect their navigation systems? The confirmation came through the empathic bond. along with a sense of scope that made Marcus dizzy. The Amber Child's psychic abilities weren't limited by distance or conventional barriers. Given enough energy and focus, it could project its influence across interplanetary distances. The power requirements would be enormous. Marcus protested. And the risk to the child? Zara's response was firm. Her children had been born into war, developed their abilities under combat conditions, and represented the last hope for their species' survival. If the Amber Child could prevent the arrival of Dominion reinforcements, that chance was worth any personal risk. Marcus felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders again. Not just protecting 3 children and their mother, but potentially influencing the outcome of an entire planetary invasion. The responsibility was staggering, but so was the opportunity. We'll need to amplify the effect somehow, Marcus decided. Use the mining facility's power grid. Maybe tap into the planetary communication network. Over the next 2 days, Marcus and Zara worked to convert the mining facility into a massive psychic amplification array. Marcus provided the technical expertise while Zara guided the modifications to ensure compatibility with her child's unique abilities. The blue and green children helped by using their camouflage and sensory abilities to keep watch for Dominion patrols. The transformation was remarkable. What had been a simple communication setup became something unprecedented, a hybrid of human technology and alien psychic enhancement, designed to project one small child's consciousness across the void to intercept an invasion fleet. As they prepared for the attempt, Marcus contacted Major Kim to coordinate timing. The mountain stronghold would launch simultaneous attacks on Dominion ground installations, creating multiple distractions while the Amber Child focused on the approaching fleet. Chun, what you're describing sounds impossible, Kim protested over the radio. Major, 3 weeks ago, I thought psychic babies were impossible too. We're operating in uncharted territory here. The final preparations took place as Kepler 442b's twin sun set for what might be the last time under an unconverted atmosphere. Marcus had connected every power cell and energy storage device in the facility to the amplification array. Zara had positioned her children in a configuration that would allow the blue and green infants to support their siblings' efforts. You ready for this? Marcus asked the Amber Child. The response came through the empathic bond, determination mixed with fear, but also something that surprised Marcus. Joy. The child was excited about the challenge, eager to test the full extent of its developing abilities. All right then, Marcus said quietly, let's see what you can do. The activation was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. The Amber Child's psychic emanations, amplified by human technology and supported by its siblings' abilities, created a wave of consciousness that expanded outward from the mining facility like ripples in a vast pond. Through the empathic bond, Marcus felt the child's awareness stretch across space, touching the edge of the system where Dominion ships prepared to drop out of hyperspace. The contact was brief, but definitive, confusion spreading through enemy navigation systems, course corrections that sent the fleet spiraling away from their intended destination. But the effort cost everything. The Amber Child collapsed immediately after the psychic burst, its crystalline form dimming dangerously. Zara rushed to provide emergency care, while Marcus monitored the communications frequencies, desperate for confirmation that their desperate gambit had worked. The confirmation came from multiple sources simultaneously. Major Kim reported that Dominion forces planet-wide were showing signs of confusion and disorganization. Orbital monitoring stations detected massive hyperspace distortions as the incoming fleet emerged light years from their intended position. And, from orbit, a familiar voice crackled over the emergency frequencies. This is Terran Defense Force Vessel Prometheus to any survivors on Kepler 442b. Dominion reinforcements have been scattered by unknown means. We are moving to retake the system. All resistance forces prepare for coordinated assault. Marcus laughed with exhaustion and relief. Zara, we did it. Your kid just saved the entire planet. But Zara's attention was focused on her amber child, whose life signs were dangerously weak following the massive psychic effort. The infant had pushed its abilities far beyond safe limits, and the cost might be permanent damage to its developing consciousness. Marcus knelt beside the small, crystalline form, feeling the empathic bond flicker like a candle in the wind. "Come on, little one. You've got a whole life ahead of you. Don't give up now." For terrifying minutes, the amber child teetered on the edge of consciousness while its siblings huddled close, their own bioluminescence dimming in sympathy. Then, gradually, the crystalline features began to brighten again. The child lived, but Marcus could sense through the bond that it would never be quite the same. The psychic effort had accelerated its development in unexpected ways, creating new abilities, but also new vulnerabilities. "Growing up too fast," Marcus murmured. Story of this whole war. Over the following hours, as Terran Defense Forces retook control of Kepler 442b's orbital space and began systematic elimination of Dominion ground forces, Marcus reflected on everything that had changed since that first night when he'd offered food to a traumatized refugee. Zara's children were no longer helpless infants. They had become something unprecedented, hybrid beings with abilities that bridge the gap between biological evolution and technological enhancement. Their experience on Kepler 442b would shape their entire species' future development. And Marcus had found something he'd thought lost forever at Proxima Station. A mission worth completing, people worth protecting, and proof that individual choices could still change the outcome of wars. As rescue shuttles landed at the mining facility and Terramedics began examining Zara and her remarkable children, Marcus felt the crystalline scale in his pocket pulse with warmth one final time. The empathic bond was fading as the crisis passed, but the connection would always remain. He had helped bring 3 extraordinary beings into the galaxy, protected them during their most vulnerable moments, and witnessed them grow into something that might reshape the entire conflict between organic life and Dominion expansion. Not bad for a broken-down Marine, Marcus told himself. In the days that followed, as Kepler 442b was liberated and Zara's family was relocated to a secure research facility where her children's abilities could be studied and understood, Marcus received new orders. Command wanted him to oversee a program developing human-alien cooperation protocols based on his unique experience with Zara's species. The war was far from over, but thanks to 3 small children and their remarkable mother, the balance of power had shifted. The Dominion's expansion could be countered, their technological advantages neutralized by abilities they had never encountered before. Marcus accepted the new assignment gladly. After all, he had experience working with extraordinary children who carried the future in their crystalline hands. And somewhere in the vast galaxy, other refugee families were making similar journeys, carrying similar hopes, needing similar protection. The work would continue, the mission would expand, but the principle would remain the same. Everyone deserves a chance to survive. Everyone deserves someone willing to stand between them and the darkness, even if it costs everything.